Hello, guys. Hello, I hope you're all well at home. Welcome to the Muscle Health Foundation's latest In Conversation With session. I'm Jake Kanter. I'm a long-time MHF volunteer. We have got a fantastic guest lined up for you today. So I will keep the preamble fairly short and sweet. These chats are, of course, all about helping our community feel more connected. And as we near the end of the second national lockdown, we are here to sprinkle a bit of muscle warrior spirit into your lives. Remember, we are stronger together, as it says on the t-shirt. Before I introduce our guest, a bit of housekeeping. Most importantly, please get involved. Join the conversation by asking questions and commenting. As I say, we have an exceptional guest, and I'm sure you'll be bursting with questions and eager to glean some insider secrets. Well, he's here to divulge. Secondly, we have eyes on behind the scenes for safeguarding purposes. My colleagues are watching us go out live and will take any action if they spot inappropriate comments or behavior, but I'm sure it will not come to that. Finally, all In Conversation With sessions are being streamed and recorded on the Muscle Health Foundation's Facebook and YouTube channels, so you can check back anytime and watch at your viewing leisure. Now then, our guest. You will know him as the man in the middle. He is quite simply one of the UK's most famous and distinguished football referees. I talk, of course, of Howard Webb. Howard had a 25-year career as a pro referee, during which he officiated 500 Premier League and Football League matches. He reached the pinnacle of his profession by reffing both a Champions League and World Cup Final in 2010. And he came up close and personal with elite players, including Cristiano Ronaldo and Zlatan Ibrahimovic. After hanging up his whistle in 2014, Howard has brought his experience to punditry roles at major broadcasters, including BT Sport, and now works in America at the Professional Referee Organization, where he has overseen the introduction of VAR to Major League Soccer. Welcome, Howard. Hopefully he's going to join me any second. Brilliant.
Hi, Jake. I'm very good, thank you. Thanks for that lovely introduction. And yeah, it might look like I'm in Manhattan at the minute. I've got a picture of the Brooklyn Bridge behind me, but I'm actually in Rotherham, South Yorkshire, where I'm sort of like visiting family. Did a bit of quarantining first, of course, with this this pandemic. Oh yeah, it's not as sexy as Manhattan.
It's more glamorous.
Exactly. But great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, thank you for joining us. It's a real treat to talk to you, and we really appreciate your time. So thank you. Before we dive in with questions, I just want to remind everyone watching that you can get your questions in for Howard. Just type a comment or leave a comment or quote or question, whatever you want in our various social media channels, and we'll come to it as soon as we can as we go through the chat. Howard, I always like to start at the beginning, really. And I just wondered if you could sort of talk us through how you actually became a referee. What was the sort of seed for that experience?
Yeah, it's a good question, Jake, because I've often wondered that myself. Why did I want to become a ref? And let's be really honest from the start. When I was about 7 or 8 years of age, I didn't have ambitions to become a ref. I think anybody who's 7 or 8 and wants to become the ref is a little bit unusual. And like thousands of other kids, I wanted to be a professional footballer. I loved the sport. I loved all sport, but I particularly loved football. I loved playing. I loved watching. And I had the ambition of being a World Cup winning captain for England, not realizing at the age of 6 or 7 how difficult that ambition would be to achieve being English, to be a World Cup winning captain. But I tried. I played as a defender, central defender. I didn't really like heading the ball, which is not a good thing for.
There's a bit of an issue.
Yeah, it's kind of like a bit of a miss really there if you want to defend it. But I tried. I worked hard and did my best. I could read the game pretty well. But at the age of about 15 or 16, the realization came that I didn't have that sort of like God-given talent to make it to the professional levels. And my dad, who's still around, is in his late 80s, right now, and still president of the local referee society. He'd become a referee himself when he'd finished playing in like his late 30s. So I'd seen him do a bit of refereeing, and I wasn't that interested. But he said to me, he said, Howard, he said, you're not a very good footballer. I said, thanks, Dad. He said, have you thought about doing some refereeing? Because you're quite a big guy. You've got a good reading of the game. I think, you probably made out for refereeing. I think you could do a good job. And I remember now I said to him, Dad, I'm not interested, because when I think about football referees in my mind's eye, I think about bald old men, which is like what I've become some years later. But at the time I wasn't. And I thought, I thought it might be nice. It might be quirky to have some younger people refereeing, and there weren't many around. So I encouraged a friend from school. I was doing my A-levels at school, and I said, do you fancy doing a referee course? Because I need some moral support. I don't want to do the course on my own. And a colleague, school friend of mine called Matt Page, me and Matt went and did the course. We registered. We did a 6-week course. It was really boring. It was like law 1. There's 17 laws in football. You have to learn them all. But back in the late 80s, it was all very sort of like, boring, just led from the front. It wasn't interactive. It was like law 1, the field of play, and the field has to be this big and that big. And I made notes. And at the end of the 6-week course, I passed an exam. Now, that exam happened, I can remember now, it happened on the 19th of December, 1989. And I was just turned 18. And I remember thinking, I've got a license here to referee, because I passed the exam. A license to referee, but I'd never, ever blown a whistle. Never been on the field as a ref. But I could go out the next week and referee. And it was a bit like being given a driving license before you've sort of like sat behind the wheel of a car. You've read the highway code, but you've been given a license to drive a car.
It's like just doing a theory test, basically.
Yeah, exactly. It was a theory test, and there you are. You're going out to referee a game. I've never done it before. These days, you do like a bit of integrated training. But equally, looking back to that night in December 1989, it was inevitable that somebody who was alive and well that night, somewhere in the world, was going to go on to referee the World Cup Final in 2010. And we didn't know where that game was going to be played. It not been selected back then, but it was going to happen, and somebody would referee it. And it turned out to be me, Jake. It turned out to be me, this failed footballer from South Yorkshire, who had never refereed a game in his life, but was being given a permit that night. And I went on to referee the World Cup Final. Unbelievable. And there's only been 20 of them. So unbelievable things happen when, certain things fall into place, and I had to work hard for a long time. And I went out and I did my first game about 3 days later, difficult game with about 8 or 9 yellow cards and 2 red cards, and that's quite a lot for under 10s football. But I'm only joking, it wasn't that bad. But I got a couple of handshakes from the parents, and it felt okay. And I came off thinking, maybe if I work hard enough for long enough, I might be able to make it to a level that I'd wanted to play at, but wasn't good enough. And it took me 11 years from that point to make it into the professional game as a ref, and another 3 to make it onto the Premier League. So a long journey.
How do you progress as a referee? What counts as progress? How do you become better at what you do?
Yeah, it's a good question, because you start at the very sort of like lowest levels. You start doing kids football, under 10s, under 9s, under 11s, and then you try your hand at doing adult football. So that's quite challenging, because locally there's not that many controls in place. You're out there on your own. You don't have 2 colleagues working with flags. You're doing everything yourself as a ref. You're turning up there. There's often no changing facilities. You're changing at the side of the field. You're having to move the dog dirt off the field before the game and the broken glass. And then you go out there and you referee 22 men. And quite often these are pub teams. These are teams, local teams on a Sunday morning or a Saturday afternoon. And it's a real character builder. It's a real way to develop quickly. And you kind of sink or swim. And the FA, the Football Association, tried to put some help in place to make sure that you get through those difficult early years. They give you a mentor these days, but that didn't happen back then. And people decide, the clubs give you a mark, and the leagues decide if you're any good at what you do, and if you are, then they'll recommend you for promotion to the next level, which is like more regional. And then you're in a kind of like a smaller pool, but you're traveling further distance. And if you do well at that level, then you get an assessor comes and sees you, and they give you a report. And when I was refereeing, you never knew the assessor was there, so you wouldn't be told in advance. So you had to work hard every game in case there was an assessor hiding behind the trees who would mark your performance.
It's kind of the equivalent of being scouted in some ways. You're turning up that don't necessarily know is there, and they're keeping tabs on you, and potentially they're the ones who give you that step up on the ladder.
Exactly. You have to impress them, and it's a bit like anything else. Sometimes you have a good day at work, and sometimes you have a bad day at work. Even when I got into the Premier League, I had some bad days at the office. Where I would struggle to see the ball big. I'd see it really small. It's like every decision was a challenge to get right, just because you weren't in the rhythm and the flow. A bit like a player. Sometimes a player has a brilliant game, and sometimes he doesn't. And the same with a ref. And you just hoped that when that assessor was there watching your game, you had a really good game. So there's a bit of luck involved as well. And I got lucky. I had some good games when assessors were there. And even if the game wasn't brilliant, they said, okay, you made some mistakes, but we can see some potential. They recommended me for promotion. And eventually, I think it was about, 11 years to make it to the Football League, the Championship, League One and League Two as a ref. And that was almost promotion every year. So it takes a lot of time. And I've got to say, Jack, I think probably in that time, in that journey, I must have come home from games at least 10 times and thrown my bag in the corner of the kitchen at home and thought, that's it, I've had enough. This is too difficult. I've had somebody shouting from the sidelines, or a player being difficult, or I've made a mistake. I've realised it in the game. And I've thought, that's it, I'm packing in, I'm quitting. There's easier things to do on a Saturday or Sunday. But then my dad would say, come on, let's have a talk. And we'd chat about it. And I'd go back, I'd clean my boots and go out and do it the following week. And it would normally go well the next time. And I can remember when I was, just fast forwarding to 2010, when I was in the tunnel in South Africa about to take charge of the World Cup final between Spain and the Netherlands, I was so glad that I'd gone back and picked my bag up each time on those occasions when I'd threatened to quit. Because if I'd have just left it in the corner just one of those 10 times and not gone back for it, I'd have been watching the game on TV with everybody else. So, perseverance is really important. And the journey from where I started to where I got to, it wasn't a straight line of success. It was up and down, and there was lots of troughs when it didn't go well, but also, and more so, lots of highs where the game went really well. And I felt privileged to be in the game that I love, with the best seat in the house. If I couldn't play it, there was no better place to be than right there on the field, contributing to the game, surrounded by these superstars of the game that many people were paying to watch, and I was getting paid to be there. So I always felt privileged and honoured to be there. But it does test your resolve. It really does, like many things in life. You've got to dig in, you've got to fight and battle and persevere, even when the odds are stacked against you.
Absolutely. A message of perseverance is such a great one for our beneficiaries. When you were standing in the tunnel for the World Cup final, did you actually reflect on some of those moments where you nearly threw in the towel? And in those moments where that was taking place, where you were questioning whether this was the right path for you, what was what gave you the strength to carry on? Was it your dad, or was it something from within as well?
I think it's a really good question, Jay. I think a couple of things. First of all, it comes from a deep-seated love of the game and love for the job I was doing. And I'll say to people who referee now, and I speak to a lot of referee societies, and there's a lot of young referees coming through as well. I'll say to them, look, you'll have times where it's really not enjoyable. You'll have times where it doesn't go well. You'll learn a lot from those situations. It's part of the reason it feels so good when it does go well is because it is challenging and it can go badly. So don't think that's not going to happen. It happens to everybody. But as long as over the period of weeks or months you're enjoying it more than not, then keep going. If you don't enjoy it for a long period of time, maybe it's not for you. But I always had that passion for the game. I always had that passion for life, really. I think if you're going to be successful at anything, whatever you might do, big or small, doesn't matter. I think to do it well, you need to be passionate about it. You need to care about it. When you go to school, if you're dragging your feet along and you don't really want to be there, you're probably just going to do enough, but you're not going to fulfill your potential. And everybody's got potential within them, for sure. Everybody's got a spark, and trying to find that spark comes from finding what you're passionate about. And then once you've found what you're passionate about, give it 100%. And that's what I did. So that passion for the game, that passion for refereeing, which I've developed, and then having good people around you. I think we've seen, haven't we, this year with the pandemic. It's you need people around you. You need support structure, and quite often you are a part of somebody else's support structure. So never underestimate the importance of that. But having somebody just to sort of like put my head back on my shoulders properly when it was sort of like wobbling was important, because otherwise you'd fill your head with like thoughts of doubt, and I always had doubt. Even going up to the World Cup, my final game was at the 2014 World Cup in Brazil. that's why I decided to retire. But just before that, the year before, I went to something called the Confederations Cup, which is like a dress rehearsal for the World Cup, where the winners of all the different, like the Euros and the Gold Cup and all these, the African Cup of Nations, they all come together and play each other. And I refereed in that tournament 2013, and I was assigned to a semi-final, Spain against Italy. And having done the World Cup final 3 years early, when Spain were not happy with my performance, even though they won, I was really fearful going into that game that I'd mess it up. And I remember sitting down and I listed all the semi-finals I'd refereed up to that point, like 24 semi-finals in Champions League, FA Cups, Championship playoff semis. And I did it to give myself some confidence because I was nervous, and my team around me helped as well. They give you confidence, and my dad was somebody who would do that for me as well. So always find people in your life who have got your best interests at heart and understand how you tick, but are also prepared to be honest. And my dad was always honest. If I had a bad game, like he told me I was a rubbish footballer. If I had a bad game, I'd get in the car and I'd be thinking after the game. I'd be thinking, because he used to come to the game with me. I used to think, tell me I've done well, and he'd say, you just weren't at the races today, son. But at least it was.
Even with thousands, tens of thousands of fans screaming angrily at you, he's probably the one voice that matters, isn't it?
Jake, were you one of those thousands at Tottenham Hotspur that used to shout?
I was always very good to the referees at Tottenham. I still am, Howard, and hopefully when we're let back into stadiums, I'll be kind. But
if you can like make that sort of that attitude spread like a Mexican wave around the stadium, that'd be great. Pass it on. The referee is great. Pass it on.
Might be quite hard. We've got a couple of questions come in, so I'll turn to some of those. First of all, there's a comment from one of our viewers, which is quoting Michael Jordan, in fact, who said that if you quit once, it becomes a habit. Never quit, and that sounds
perfect.
Very much like your own experience.
Perfect. Yeah, absolutely.
Question from someone here. We all accept that mistakes are made, not only by referees, but by all of us. But is there a decision you made that you wish you could go back and change?
Oh my goodness! You said we only had an hour today, didn't you, Jake? So I better just limit it a little bit, otherwise we could be here for hours.
You're being modest, I'm sure, Howard.
Yeah, I mean, I made some good decisions, but I made some bad ones as well. And obviously, and we could talk about VAR later. But in the days before VAR, you had to make your decision on the field, and that was it. Unless your assistants could help you or the fourth official, there was no going back. That was the decision that you made, and you get to know pretty quickly from an instinctive sort of like feeling whether or not the decision that you've made is probably the right one or not. You learn over many games to read natural play reaction, and that reaction would either confirm or put your decision or put doubt into your mind. And I made several decisions where I thought, oh my goodness, I think I've made a mistake there. The feedback I'm getting from the players, because as a Premier League referee, you get feedback from the players, tells me I've probably got it wrong. Obviously, the World Cup final, there was one, but I'll talk about that probably a little bit later. But I think the one domestically that I made was one involving Manchester United and Tottenham. I'm sorry, Jake, it is a Tottenham anecdote, but and towards the end of my career, people all over the football world seem to think that I was a bit of a Manchester United supporter, which wasn't true. I'm not from Manchester. I don't support Manchester United. I refereed them 39 times, and often against other big clubs. And there was sometimes controversy, and sometimes that controversy went in the favour of Man U and would be remembered. And even now, when Manchester United play and the decision goes in their favour, people will tweet on Twitter. They'll say, Anthony Taylor or Mike Dean or whoever it might have been is the replacement for Howard Webb in Manchester United's squad. So they've signed a new ref, but just a joke, of course. But I think it all started back in a game in 2009. I refereed Tottenham against Man U at Old Trafford, and Tottenham were winning the game in the second half 2-0, which was a bit of a surprise because Man U were right near the top of the league. They were battling with Liverpool to win the Premier League. And Liverpool had a chance of winning it that year, and Tottenham were winning 2-0 in the second half, and it was a big upset. And like, wow, if Man U lose this game, then the title is really swinging towards Liverpool. And I gave a decision. I was about 5 or 6 yards away from Wayne Rooney with the ball at his feet, in good shape. I was able to see everything that was happening. But he found a pass. It was about a 25-yard pass into the feet of Michael Carrick, who was playing for Man U that day. And it was a bit of a chase between Carrick and the goalkeeper for Tottenham was a guy called Aurelio Gomez, and the Brazilian goalkeeper. You remember him? And It was like, who's going to get to the ball first? Is it going to be Carrick or is it going to be Gomez? Because if Carrick gets there first, it's probably going to be a penalty. If Gomez gets there first, it won't be. And Carrick got to the ball first and just knocked it to the left. And what I couldn't see, because my view was shielded by Carrick, was Gomez got a big hand to the ball after Carrick had touched it and knocked it out for a throw-in. But from my position, it just looked like Carrick had knocked it to the side. And I thought, oh, what a great picture. There you go. So as Carrick's bearing down on goal, he gets a touch to the left, but then Gomez gets a big glove. I just don't see that from pitch level looking through the back of Carrick. And I give a penalty, and I expect it to be totally accepted. And the reaction of Gomez on seeing that I'd given a penalty, knowing he's got his hand to the ball and it should have been a throw-in, he ran around like a clown with his hands in the air saying, oh, it's like he was so astounded by this decision. I knew straight away there must have been more to it. There was clearly something more to it. But there was no VAR. I asked my assistants, what have I missed? They were some distance away. They had no real view of it. So I had no choice but to go with the penalty. And as much as in my heart, I was thinking this must be wrong. And I was hoping that Cristiano Ronaldo took the penalty. I was hoping that it would miss. But he didn't. He slotted it home. That made it 2-1 to Tottenham. That was like a goal back. And I thought, well, Tottenham might hang on. You know, they might see it through, might win it 2-1. And you know what happened? They lost 5-2. And that was the archetypal turning point of the game. And all for the rest of the game, I'm thinking, no, every time a goal went in for Man U, I thought, I know where the turning point is. And one of the ways that you can tell how you're performing as a ref on the Premier League, on a live TV game, a Sky game or a BT Sport game, what happens is at the end of the game or at half time, one of the cameramen, it's like called a steady cam man, he's got a camera on his shoulder and he's running up and down the touchline. And at the end of the half, he runs onto the field to zoom in on the most important person from the game. And you're hoping it's going to be the goal scorer or the goalkeeper when he's played well or the captain. And when he misses those people and he shoves his camera into your face as the ref, you know it's not gone well. And that camera followed me all the way off into the corner. And it was a bad mistake. And it started this issue about me being a Man United fan. And in the end, it became a bit of a pain. But I apologise to all Tottenham fans for this terrible decision.
Thank you for making me relive that pain. Although I think it probably says more about Tottenham than your decision, I have to say. So while we're talking about mistakes, I mean, look, we've got a question from Ryan O'Leary, who's one of our beneficiaries. Hi, Ryan. Hope you're well. He asked, what do you think about VAR? I mean, let's talk about VAR while we're kind of on the subject, aren't we?
Yeah, of course. It's Ryan. Yeah, hi, Ryan. Great question, by the way. I mean, because it's so topical, isn't it, at the moment? And I wouldn't say I'm one of the world's great experts, but I'm somebody that's heavily involved in VAR. I went over to New York to work for the company that does refereeing over there, that supplies referees to Major League Soccer. And my job was to implement VAR into that league. And we went live in 2017. And we found some real benefits. You know, the thought of going into a big game without VAR in place, I think is quite daunting now. I look back to my career thinking, how could I go into a World Cup final, or a Champions League final, an FA Cup final, without that ability to rectify a clear error, like the Gomez situation that I've just talked about? So now those situations don't happen. I mean, if you think about an assistant referee who's told to keep their flag down on a close offside, give the benefit of the doubt to the attacking team, and they do that. But I was an assistant on the Premier League for 2 years. I wasn't the best, but I was at the end of the 1990s, and it was sometimes difficult to not believe your eyes, because your eyes are saying the player is just offside when it's at full speed. But you know from experience that when it looks just offside, they're probably onside. So you keep your flag down, you give the benefit of that doubt to the attacking team. In days gone by, you wouldn't know if that was a right decision or not until after the game. And if the team goes through to score and it's the only goal of the game in the first minute, that decision is playing back through your head every minute for the rest of the game. You're thinking, I hope I got it right. I hope I got it right. And it must be affecting your decision making for the rest of the game. Nowadays, within 20 seconds, somebody can say to your earpiece, check complete, which means you've not got it wrong. It's fine. Move on, good decision. So all of those things are happening all the time. They're benefits of VAR, but of course we're seeing some teething problems. I think if you look at, I've got a picture actually, if Grace wants to put it up, of Thierry Henry handling the ball, and Henry, many of you will know, obviously great player, played for the French national team, as we can see here, played for Arsenal as a legend as well. Now actually manages in Major League Soccer at Montreal. In a World Cup playoff game in 2009. he handled the ball. You can see him doing it here against Ireland, and it wasn't seen by the referee. The referee was a friend of mine from Sweden, a guy called Martin Hansen, who just was, blindsided of this decision, was looking through a crowd of players and just, or whatever, didn't have the angle. And the assistant was some way away, couldn't see this handball. But Henry handled it and he passed it to the number 5, William Gallas, who you can see there as well, who also played in the Premier League. And Gallas scored, and that was the only goal of the game, or the winning goal at least. And that put Ireland out of the World Cup. And the referee in that game, good ref, had a good game apart from this, didn't go to referee in the World Cup the following summer. But within 10 seconds, Jake, we could see that situation on TV at home. We could see it clearly. There's no doubt it was clearly handball. And I was so frustrated because I thought, we need some help. We need, as referees, we need to be able to have the same access that the TV have got to rectify these biggest of all decisions like this. And I can remember speaking to the Football Association the next day and saying, look, we need some help. We need help, because this was the turning point in my mind that we needed VAR. And it was one of the situations that I guess accelerated the conversation. But I do want to say, I think VAR works best when you do save it for big situations like this. I don't mean the game has to be big. I mean, the situation has to be match changing. So we're not talking about possible penalty, maybe not, where, it's a 50-50 call. I worked for 2 years for BT Sport as an analyst, and it used to amaze me how, at half time we'd talk about a penalty and 2 ex-professional players for the national team as well could have difference of opinions on a penalty. So it's not for those situations. It's for the Gomez one where he clearly gets a hand on the ball that I don't see. It's for the situation like this one with Henry. Diego Maradona, God rest his soul, he only passed away yesterday, but the hand of God in 1986, I was 14 watching that game. It's for those type of situations, I think, that we need to reserve the VAR for. And if you do, it can be a really strong addition to the game. Manage expectations. Don't let people think it'll solve all debate, because there's too much debate in football to solve through VAR. But it will clear those really big errors that sometimes you see and you don't want to make, but you sometimes do.
One of our viewers is part Irish and a Spurs fan, so they're just going through the mill here.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I mean, would you prefer to be refereeing now with VAR than previously when you didn't have that kind of comfort blanket in a way?
Really, really good question. Yeah. Yes, I would. That said, I'm curious how the knowledge of the fact that VAR is there impacts the mentality of the referees, because we say to our referees, and again, I don't work in the Premier League, so I've got lots of ex-colleagues that do, who are friends of mine, but I work in Major League Soccer, and we say to our referees over there in the US and Canada, look, referee as though VAR doesn't exist. Don't think about it before you make the decision, because there's no point doing so. It's irrelevant until you make the decision. You make your decision as normal, make a good decision, because good refereeing starts on the field, and then let the VAR know what the decision is. And then the VAR will ask themselves the question, is the on-field decision clearly wrong? Not was it right, but was it clearly wrong? And they're 2 different questions, because if you ask 10 people, was the decision right? You might get a split of 6 and 4. 6 might say yes, 4 might say no. So how can we use VAR to rectify a clear error when it's split like this? But if you ask those same 10 people on a situation, was that situation clearly wrong? You're much more likely to get closer to getting 10 out of 10 as an answer. So therefore, it works much better when you ask that question. And what we've said to our VARs is, if you look at the situation and you don't form an opinion that it's clearly wrong, the decision that's taken, then defer to the on-field decision. That is the one we're going to go with, and that way we maintain the position of the referee as being the main decision maker, and the VAR just works as like a safety net for Thierry Henry's handball, or Diego Maradona's handball, or my table penalty with Gomez, or Nigel De Jong in the World Cup final kicking Xabi Alonso in the chest, and the silly referee not seeing it.
So, I mean, when we reflect on some of those moments where you didn't have VAR, I know you talked about the sort of the mental niggle of potentially getting a decision wrong early in the match, and that playing on your mind throughout the game. Do you think that you overcorrect? That's something you hear pundits talk about quite regularly, that referees will overcompensate for a mistake they've made by awarding a team, an equivalent decision.
You do hear that, don't you? He's evened it up, hasn't he? That sort of thing. You don't consciously do that, for sure. I mean, if you make a mistake, before VAR at least, anyway. So that's what I can really refer to because I've not refereed with VAR. But when you make a mistake, you do get that gut feeling that you've made an error, as I've spoken about, like the one with Gomez. That gut feeling might not be safe, by the way. I've suspected I've made an error on a field and worried about it for 35 minutes for the rest of the game, and then got into the locker room. Sorry, the dressing room. I'm speaking American. Get into the dressing room, and I've looked at the TV and realised I didn't make a mistake at all, and I've wasted 35 minutes of negative energy on the field when I should have just stayed focused and believed in myself. Having belief in yourself is so important.
Yeah.
But you don't constantly do it, but you do get that gut feeling, and sometimes that gut feeling is right. You have made a mistake. But if you then even something up, first of all, it's not honest and fair, and as a referee, you're there to be fair and honest. And secondly, it means you end up having to make another mistake, and that's not good. That's just incompetence. So I'll be honest, you do hope that the outcome of the game is not impacted by that decision. So when I gave the penalty to Man U, I'll be honest, with the feeling that I got, I was hoping it wouldn't be a decisive decision. I was hoping that Tottenham might hang on, get another goal, and nobody's really talking about the penalty. When they go on to lose 5-2, you know it's the turning point, and you know that it's going to be a painful few days for you, because you just know that the media, the radio, the TV, the internet is going to go wild with comments about you, and it can be a pretty lonely place, even though you're surrounded by 77,000 people. Coming off that field can be pretty lonely, and a few times I've stood in the shower after a game, put my head against the wall with the water dripping down onto my bald head, and thinking, what's going to be the fallout when I come out of the shower, when I get outside of this dressing room, what is going to be the fallout? Because it was my profession, it was my job, but also I had a reputation, I had a professional sort of credibility that I valued and didn't want to be battered too much. And also just people saying, why did he make that decision? What was going through his head? Blah blah blah. I'd rather just come out and say, guys, like I've said to you, Carrick kicked the ball first. I didn't see the touch by Gomez. I was, shielded from the view. It looked like a normal penalty to me. Nothing sinister, nothing, untoward. Just a mistake on the field. And I think sometimes if referees could come out and say that, there might be some benefits, I think, of hearing the voice of the ref. Because whoever's on the call now might have had a perception of me before I came on this call. It might not have changed one little bit, but equally, it might have done. People might think, oh, he's just a normal guy. He's just somebody who cares about the game, in the way that we do. So I think sometimes there's a benefit for referees having a voice. Yeah,
we've got a couple of VAR questions coming in, but I just wanted to ask you something on that point about having a strong mentality on the pitch and being able to kind of shake off things that have happened during a game. That must require quite a bit of fortitude and mental strength. Do you think that's a really key part of refereeing?
I think it's the key part, Jake. You're very good at this, aren't you? I think it's the key part. We did some research when I was on the Premier League back in the 2012, 2013, something like that. A university did research about what it is that makes a good referee at the elite level, and they interviewed all of us that were professional referees, and the one thing that came out of that study, more than anything else, more than physical fitness, more than communication, the thing that came out was mental toughness, resilience. That's what you need. When you think about it, when you're refereeing a game of football, the players they're trying to make you make a mistake. So the ball will touch a player, it'll go out for a throw in to the other team. And quite often, the first thing that player does is appeal for the throw-in. They know it's not their throw. He knows it's not his throw. He's trying to make you give it to him. That means he's trying to make you make a mistake. When you do make a mistake, the players go crazy at you. So it's kind of like that really strange world that we work in. So don't worry about what the players are doing. Yeah, read the natural reactions. The players can give you clues. Sometimes you have to recognize what's natural and what's orchestrated when players are trying to force you to do something that's not right. But read the natural reactions and then believe in yourself. Believe in your training. Believe in your, all the things that you've done. Every time you read the laws of the game, every time you watch a game, you speak to a colleague, you do a training session, you're investing into your kind of personal bank. And sometimes games are tough and you have to draw out of that quite a bit. But you can only draw out of it when you've put lots into it in the first place. So you have to do a lot of work to give yourself the confidence that you've got the resources to get through a difficult game. And the only games I've really lost control of, I've had poor games, but the only ones I've lost control of are the ones where I've lost my self-belief. Of all the Premier League grounds, I think Everton is the most difficult one for me. Goodison Park, great football club, really hostile fans when you're refereeing there. They're close to you, close to the field, and they let you know what they think. And the only game I've really lost control of, I think, is a game early in my Premier League career that I did, Everton against Bolton Wanderers, who are now in the bottom division. Unbelievable, but at the time they were a Premier League team with some good players and a lot of experienced players on the field, and it was a tough game. The first 20 minutes I was giving what I was seeing and penalising fouls, and sometimes against, obviously against Everton, the fans were getting hostile. That was rubbing off on players. And after about 20 minutes, I started to doubt myself. I thought, maybe I'm just having one of those days where I'm not seeing things well. And I made a cardinal sin. I stopped blowing the whistle when I should have been blowing it. I stopped doing my job because each time I was blowing it, it was tough. So I started to hide. And Gary Speed was the captain of Bolton. Remember Gary Speed? He, another great player who obviously unfortunately passed away some years ago, but a legend of the game, a Welsh captain. And he was captain of Bolton that day. And he came up to me in the game and he said, "Ref, you're starting to let us down. You're letting us down. You're not doing your job." And I said, "Oh, don't be silly." But he was totally right. So I learned from that experience, and I learned to keep my self-belief in the game. Sometimes your shoulders will drop. My dad used to come to the games and say, "Was something on your mind in the 80th minute? Because it looked like your body language changed a little bit." I said, "Yeah, I was not too happy with the decision." He said, "I could see." So, you've got to always be an actor on the field, shoulders back. Even if you're inside, you've got a lot of doubt. You've got to learn to show confidence and show certainty, because otherwise players will feed off that uncertainty if you show it through your body language.
Yeah. So we've got a bunch of questions. Should we do a few quick fire ones?
Yeah, let's keep it short
and rattle through a couple of these. So let's just jump back to VAR quickly. Someone asked, what do you think about using VAR for close offsides?
Well, it's the biggest talking point of all, isn't it, I guess, at the moment, because I guess a lot of the controversy that we see in the Premier League comes from those really tight offside decisions. And of course, offside's a tough one because you're either off or you're not offside. There's no halfway house. But of course, now when we're putting lines on, we're now dealing with really small margins. I'm quite fortunate because in MLS we don't use the lines because we don't always have cameras in places that mean we can triangulate all the positions. If we did, I'd have to have a conversation with the clubs and say, do you want these lines or not? I guess what will happen is, I think the laws of the game will change to give more benefit of the doubt to the attacking team and accommodate for this loss of benefit of the doubt that always was given to the attacking team that doesn't exist now. I think that is what will happen. So it's a bit of a consequence of the implementation of VAR on a factual matter, in that you get in these situations that are really tight. But what's the answer? I guess it's just a change of the laws of the game to give more benefit to the attacking team. They're looking at doing that now. And also they're also looking at automated offside situations. So if a player's offside, there'll be an instruction to the assistant immediately that the player's offside, a bit like goal line technology, but it'll be for offside. And then instead of letting the play continue, the assistant can raise the flag straight away, knowing that the player's offside as soon as they become involved in the game. Being offside is only one part of the jigsaw. You need to not only be in an offside position, but then do something in that position, play the ball, challenge an opponent, one of those sort of things before you get penalised. So the assistant knows that number 9's offside. Okay, wait, does number 9 get involved? Yes. Now I'm going to flag it. And that will mean that we're not cancelling goals for small margins of offside 30 or 40 seconds later.
Those sound like very, very welcome improvements. You mentioned Goodison Park as being quite a hostile, formidable place to go and referee. In which club stadium did you most enjoy refereeing? That's another question we've got here.
Yeah, domestically and internationally, two answers here. Domestically, just across Stanley Park at Liverpool, under floodlights, and I know they've redeveloped the stadium in the last couple of years, but coming out of the tunnel there in the old stand, this is Anfield sign, walking out, seeing the cop singing "You'll Never Walk Alone" under lights. I refereed some magnificent games at Anfield. I did Liverpool against Arsenal once, finished 4-4. Andre Arshavin scored all 4 goals for Arsenal that night, and just amazing. Just best seat in the house. I'm just watching these players play around me. It's wonderful. In a great venue like that. So great feeling, great hairs on the back of your neck standing up when they're singing that song on the Kop end, and then internationally, I think the San Siro is great, by the way. I always enjoyed refereeing in Italy, the home of AC Milan and Inter Milan. But I think the Santiago Bernabeu Stadium in Madrid, great venue. In fact, I think if Grace puts up, I think number 12, picture 12, I think, Grace, you'll see that there's a picture of the Bernabeu Stadium, the home of Real Madrid. I refereed the Champions League final there. In fact, it might be the next one. That's the Champions League final there at the toss-up. I did Inter Milan against Bayern Munich. This was 2010. And just an unbelievable cathedral of football, 5 tiers, 80,000. This was the first time the Champions League had been played on a Saturday night rather than on a midweek date. And a little story about this, it's really quite interesting. At the Santiago Bernabeu Stadium, the home of Real Madrid, the dressing rooms are quite high up in the stand. So if you just leave that picture on for a minute, Grace, because when you come out of the dressing room, you come out onto like a landing on the top of 23 stairs that take you down to pitch level. So at 8:30 that night, back in May 2010, before this game started, I pressed the bell in the dressing room for the teams to come out onto this landing at the top of the steps, and I went out onto it as well. So out of the door to my right came the black and blue striped players of Inter Milan, and out of the door to my left came the red and white striped players of Bayern Munich. And then out of another door, out came 23 little Spanish kids aged about 8 or 9. And 11 were wearing Inter Milan kit and 11 were wearing Bayern Munich kit. And there was one little Spanish kid, aged about 8, looking really, really fed up, wearing a referee's kit. and these are the player escorts. And one of them had been told he's got to be the referee escort, and he was so not happy about it, really. And I held his hand, and I gave him like a memento. I gave him like a £1 coin as a memento, and he didn't look impressed by that either, so I took it back. So I held his hand, and we walked down the steps. And then at the bottom of those 23 steps, you walk out of the tunnel, and you can see the red carpet on the picture there. And just on the red carpet, there's like a black thing. You can see it's like a podium. And there was nothing actually on top of it as I walked towards it. But as I got closer to it from within, up came the European Cup, the big silver trophy, the big ears. And it came up like automatically from within the podium. And I walked past it and I could see my face in the trophy. And amazing. I mean, amazing things happen really when you've got a passion for something. And it was a great feeling to have the responsibility of doing this. Don't forget, only 20 years earlier, I'd been refereeing under 10s football and making a mess of it, and here I was about to referee the Champions League final. So absolutely, I'm really blessed, and the game went well. And you tend to remember stadiums for where the games go well, and I always seem to do okay in the Bernabeu Stadium in Madrid. So that for me is probably my favourite place.
They won 2-0, didn't they?
They did. Diego Milito scored both goals.
Yes. Okay. Another question here is from Karen Mallet. She asks, "What team do you support, Howard?"
It's not Manchester United, even though if you put this picture up, number 11, Grace, you'll see this is the picture that goes live on the internet every time Man U get a decision. It's like another referee in the Man U squad. This was posted by Ryan Barbel, a Liverpool player, after a decision that I gave against Liverpool at Man U. That's airbrushed. That's not real. He got fined £10,000 for posting that picture. I actually support a team in the Championship, Rotherham United. I'm a Rotherham lad. We're currently 19th in the Championship. We play Bournemouth tomorrow. Difficult game because Bournemouth are doing really well. And we lost at QPR on Tuesday. But I'm a big fan. I'm the honorary ambassador of the football club. And it's the first result I look for. I mean, I'm really passionate about the club, and hoping we can survive in the Championship. But it's hard. I mean, the standard's pretty high, and we were promoted last year on the curtailed season in second place behind Coventry. So we'll see how we get on. And but the good thing is we beat Sheffield Wednesday this year. Sheffield Wednesday are the big local rivals. So even if we go down, I'll look back with fondness on our victory over Sheffield Wednesday. It's a bit like you beating Arsenal. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And I presume you have to declare these things, do you, before you become a professional referee?
Yeah, you do. Yeah. Generally speaking, you won't be assigned to teams when you're working in the Premier League or Football League. You won't be assigned to teams that are within a certain distance, so usually about 15 or 20 miles from where you live. So, for example, I would never referee Rotherham United or Sheffield Wednesday or Sheffield United, but I could referee teams a little bit further afield. So, Chesterfield, for example, possibly Doncaster Rovers. If you're from a city, then you won't be assigned to those teams. But of course, you don't always live in the place where the team is that you support. So if you do support a team, then you have to declare it and mention if you've ever held a season ticket, if your close family member does, if you've got any interest, and then therefore there can be no allegations made. But actually, in my experience, I've refereed Rotherham in friendly games pre-season, and you tend to go the other way because you want to prove you're totally impartial. So you end up going the other way. So you'd rather just not be involved at all.
Yeah, that makes sense. Another question: best player you have ever refereed?
Oh, I've been so lucky, Jack. I've been on the field with so many great players over the years, but I think the one that stands, including Lionel Messi, in fact, I cautioned Messi for diving. I only went to the Nou Camp Stadium, the home of Barcelona, once, and that was a quarter-final game, Barcelona against Bayern Munich in 2009, I think it was, and I cautioned him for diving. I was like, Messi doesn't dive, he made a bit of a meal of a contact, but it should have been a penalty. I saw it as a dive. I saw him make a meal of it, gave a yellow card. 97,000 Catalonians are not impressed by me. More so, Pep Guardiola was not impressed at all. He went crazy on the sidelines at this decision. My fourth official was Martin Atkinson, still referee on the Premier League. He said to me, Howard, you're going to have to come over and speak to Guardiola. You're going to have to move him and put him in the stand. I thought, this is not what I want, really. But we did. I had to put him into the stand for his reaction, his unacceptable reaction. And it was the only time I went there. I never got invited back. So I refereed Barcelona away from home, but never the Nou Camp. The best player, I think, is probably Cristiano Ronaldo. A bit of a boring answer, isn't it? I guess you were hoping I might say something left field, but Ronaldo gave the best performance I have ever seen in a game, and the picture that you see there is the game concerned. This was a playoff for the World Cup 2014 between Sweden and Portugal, and it was billed as the battle between Zlatan Ibrahimovic, who you see there, and Cristiano Ronaldo. And I guess it was because there were 6 goals scored across the 2 ties. The first one was played in Lisbon, the second one was played in Stockholm, and all 6 goals were scored by those 2 players. Ronaldo, in the second game, he scored early on to make it 2-0 on aggregate because they'd won 1-0 back in Portugal. I'm refereeing the second game in Stockholm. Then Zlatan grabs the game, scores 2 goals to make it 2-2. So it's really, really on a knife edge, and you could see the momentum has shifted. It's all going to Sweden. They've got the fans behind them. It looked like they're going to go on and win the game. There's only going to be one winner. But Ronaldo just single-handedly turned the game around. You could see him just absolutely pull his teammates up by the bootstraps and drove it forward and scored 2 more goals in the game to get a hat-trick and win the game 3-2 for Portugal. And he did something really interesting at the end of the game. I refereed the game really well. I've talked about bad mistakes I made, but I refereed the game really well. It's a really crucial point of the game. I think it was at 2-1 to Sweden. There was an appeal for a penalty by Sweden. Kim Kallström, I think it was, went down looking for a penalty. And I was in a good position and could see that there was no contact. And I blew the whistle, and the Swedish fans expected me to point to the spot for a penalty. And instead of doing that, I pulled out a yellow card and cautioned him for diving. And it was a massive decision, massive. And I was pretty certain it was right. I was pleased when I saw the footage afterwards to confirm it. But it was a good decision. And I think Ronaldo appreciated my performance. We've not always had a great relationship. I actually sent him off in a Manchester derby. I think picture number 7. I think he got a yellow card there. He applauded me in my face for the decision. So he got a yellow card there, and then later in the game, he tried to handle the ball into the goal, and that's a yellow card offence. So I sent him off. And so we've not always kind of like got on the field particularly well. But then I refereed him many times after that for Man U, for Real Madrid, for Portugal. And I think he'd built up some kind of begrudging respect for me. And obviously, he's a great player. I respected him. And at the end of the game, the Sweden game, he came up to me and gave me his shirt. And that was a great touch. And the shirt is now framed on the bedroom wall of my son, Jack, who's now 20. But wow. Really, really nice moment for me that Ronaldo would do that. It was a highlight of my career to referee that game. And to see that performance from an individual player who could have such an impact on the game at that level that could drag a national team through to the World Cup in the way that he did, outstanding.
Yeah, we actually ties in really nicely with the question we've got from John Boulding, who is the captain of the England power chair football team. So, hi, John. Hope you're well. He says, are you allowed to ask players for their shirt after the game, or like the Ronaldo situation, does it have to kind of be gifted to you?
Yeah, it can look kind of wrong if you start asking for shirts, So I was always really careful about that sort of thing. I would never ask. But if he says have it, it's difficult to kind of say no. And I mean, all referees in my experience I've ever worked with have been really straight and really honest and impartial. They'll make mistakes, but they're born out of just simple mistakes. And I wouldn't ask for a shirt, but if one was offered, then I would take it. And interestingly enough, I mean, I remember Per Mertesacker played for Arsenal, the German central defender. He once came to me after the end of a German national game that I refereed, and he knocked on the dressing room door, and he came and he said, Howard, he said, my cousin is a ref, and I really would love your shirt to give to him. And he said, in exchange, I'll give you mine. So that was the only time a player has ever asked for a shirt from me. And actually, he's from Hanover, and my partner lives in Hanover as well. She's German, so it's quite interesting that. That's where he's from. But that's the only time that somebody's asked for my shirt.
That's a great story. I'll just turn to a couple of other questions if I come in. So Adam McAvoy, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Apologies if I'm not. He asked about the work you're doing in America. Actually. He says, is a return to England something you would consider in the future, or are you enjoying the work that you're doing out in the States?
I'm loving it out there, Adam. Yeah, I mean it's a growing football sort of environment. It's getting bigger all the time, getting more relevant, there's more interest, more focus, more scrutiny, all of the time. We're getting another team next year in MLS to make it 27 when Austin join. So it's a great place to be. There's eyes on what we're doing. I mean, we're in our playoffs at the moment. We had a difficult penalty shootout at the weekend in Orlando. Which put a lot of pressure on me because there's an expectation we'll deliver good outcomes, and we made some mistakes in that penalty shootout, which is kind of not the time you'd expect referees to make mistakes. So I have to deal with that. I'm trying to raise the standards to make it to get to a level where we're comparable with our colleagues in Europe, refereeing on top leagues. We're preparing our officials well. I've got a great team around me. Standards are improving on the field. The officiating standards are improving as well. And we're pushing the sport in a big way over there. Would I ever come back? I don't know. I mean, there's obviously limited jobs in different parts of the world in refereeing. So I feel fortunate to have one in the US. The only downside of being there is that it's a long way from family and friends, of course. I have a contract for another year, and I'd love to extend it, but we'll see. We'll see what the bosses think. But loving it, loving being involved. I'm a lucky guy that I make a living from something that I love doing, and then once that contract is eventually up, then I'll see what other opportunities exist elsewhere.
Fantastic. Thanks for your question, Adam. What do you think about the idea of referees' voices being heard live by fans?
Good question. I think my experience, I think that when people hear referees, it humanizes them. It gives them kind of like a warmth almost, which they don't otherwise achieve. Just by what you see, and again, I hope that just having this hour with me today on this call might make you look upon at least me or referees in a slightly different way. Maybe not, but they are just people who care about the game. They're desperately trying to get things right, whatever right is. There's things that are not black and white. Quite often we're working within shades of grey, and trying to work out what the best shade of grey is not always easy. But I think when you hear from a referee post game, sometimes you can't do it every time. It's difficult, or events like this, it can help. And we are looking at ways to ensure that, for example, the VAR process is as transparent as possible, so that fans can hear what's happening. So one of the things we've been looking at trialing over in the US, just in practice games, is the referee speaking the decision on the loudspeaker or the public address system, a bit like you get in NFL, or NHL in hockey, so that fans in the stadium can hear the referee say, the goal awarded to whichever team has been disallowed due to an offside by number 9. The restart is an indirect free kick. Something like that might be helpful. And we also broadcast some conversations between the officials during the tournament that took place in Orlando called MLS is Back, so that fans could hear what was being said on the TV. It was quite an exceptional tournament. We were trying to make it the league was trying to make it as enhanced as possible. So hence the reason that happened there. But we need to work with the International FA Board and FIFA collectively around the world to find the best ways to do that. But I think there's some benefits of fans hearing what referees' rationale is for decisions.
Yeah, a complicated matter, I should imagine, and one would be fascinating to see how it plays out in the future. We've got about 5 minutes. While we're sort of talking about referees being heard on the pitch, I mean, clearly players would have to behave themselves slightly better if referees were mic'd up. I mean, who's one of the rudest players you've ever dealt with?
Oh, there's not that many. I mean, okay, footballers. Let's be honest about this. Footballers don't behave in the way that some of the sportsmen do on the field. They react more openly. Certainly compared to their colleagues in rugby. You know, there's no point hiding behind that. We have to say that is true, and it's something that we're aware of. The culture of sports is evolved slightly differently. It doesn't mean that we wave the white flag and say anything goes. Really doesn't. You know, if we were always encouraged as referees, if you get mobbed or surrounded, you should take strong action. You're always trying to find that right balance to understand the emotion of the game without, not overreacting and ruining the game, but showing that you are prepared to stand up to dissent. And that's still a message that we still work towards, and we're trying all the time to educate players about the benefit, the value or the importance of example that they set to young players, and the need for referees to be strong and courageous if they need to be. I mean, if you saw Anthony Taylor, an English referee, sent off Vidal for 2 yellow cards in the Champions League, I think last night or the night before, 2 yellow cards in the same incident. Unusual, puts pressure on the ref, but credit to him for having the courage to do it, and the player should obviously have heeded the first yellow card. So I hope he gets supported for that. I really do. The hardest player was a guy who played at Liverpool, Newcastle, played at Cardiff, I think played at West Ham as well. Craig Bellamy is on number 8, Grace. Probably the most difficult player to manage that I came across. He would always want to just have a little dig, and it wouldn't always be, in a way that was offensive, so you could send him off or whatever. But it was always something that would just be a little bit cutting. It'd have quite a sharp tongue, and when you refereed a team that he played for, if his name wasn't on the team sheet, you knew you were in for a more enjoyable day, and he always kept you on your toes. So I would say he was probably the most difficult player, and difficult for me to win over. I think difficult for all referees to win over. Mega competitive, a great player, but a difficult person to manage on the field.
So you actually you reveled in that challenge?
Maybe not with Craig. With some players, yes. I mean, players who are difficult. I mean, people talk about, and again, I'm mindful now. It's 6 years since I've been on the field, so some players that I would have refereed who were difficult are no longer playing. Players like Joey Barton, people said, "Oh, he must have been a difficult player," and I guess he was. But with Joey, I could kind of find something to work with to kind of win him over. Robbie Savage, who we see on BT Sport now, and I worked with Robbie for a couple of years on BT Sport. Diamond of a guy, really. A big heart, cares a lot. But on the field, he would be like a terrier, and he'd keep you on your toes as a ref. But he knew the line. If you cautioned Robbie, he would know to pull it back. He was professional. Wouldn't often get. I think he got 1 second yellow card in his entire career. He got many first yellow cards, and that tells you he knows where the line is. So there's a lot of players who will test you as a ref. You've got to be a big personality on the field and stand up when you need to stand up. And people say the best referees are the ones that you don't see and notice, and that's true if the game is that type of game. But actually, you can't always go into the game wanting to be that low-key character. If you do, you're not prepared to stand up and make a big decision. The best referees are the ones that are seen and heard when you need them to be seen and heard, the ones who are prepared to make a big decision. Because if you stand up and make it, and you get it right, you can then drop back into the background and nobody talks about you. They only talk about you when you get it wrong or you miss it.
Yeah. So sadly, we are running out of time. I mean, I personally could ask you loads more, and I'm sure the people watching could. I mean, I think one of the themes of these sessions is where we think about individuals who've overcome adversity or have overcome challenges in their lives and their careers, and that's kind of where I just wanted to end with you. Really, can you think of an example in your career where you have really overcome adversity and how you did that?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, refereeing is important. It's a multi-million-pound/dollar business, and decisions are impactful, and they can cause people to get relegated, clubs to get relegated. That can cost people their jobs. So it's serious business. It's serious fun, and you can never underestimate the importance it plays in people's lives. But it is a sport at the end of the day, and me making a bad decision that costs a team a point or 3 points, it's not the end of the world. and I always manage to bounce back. You know, people are facing much greater adversity every single day throughout the world in their lives. Even personally, I mean, I suffered, and I wrote about it. I wrote a book in 2016. I wrote about, I suffered with, and still do with OCD, quite severe OCD. You know, as a kid, it was really quite challenging to sometimes if I was going through a phase where it was going through my head a lot, I would end up struggling to get through days sometimes because I couldn't do normal things without having to do them a certain number of times, and it was causing my head to run a million miles an hour. I managed to kind of like control it a little bit. I managed to face up to it a little bit. It's still there. It still sits in the background. Even when and I wrote about it in my book, even when I put my shirt on before a game in a Champions League or World Cups, Premier League, sometimes I'd have to take it off several times before I felt comfortable with the shirt on my back. These are things that people don't see, So everybody, even if you're facing something like this, you can still, get through and achieve certain things. Everybody's got potential, and I guess probably I'm, proud of the fact that I was able to come through that. And I know it can be really debilitating for people as well. So I hope that writing about it in the way that I did in my book tells people that, no matter how it feels, speak to people about it, seek help, work it out, in a way that works for you, and you can probably, come through it and achieve something that's within your potential.
Fantastic. It feels like a really lovely message to end on. Before we go, two things. Michael McGrath, our CEO, I know you accepted a shirt from Cristiano Ronaldo. We hope you will accept a Muscle Health Foundation t-shirt as well in the future if we send you one. Will you do that?
I would love one. And I'm on Twitter. I don't usually tweet about things. I get too much abuse, but I'll even put it out on social media with me showing my muscle t-shirt.
Let's do it, shall we? We've got to do our Muscle Health Foundation, the Muscle Warrior salute. So let's give it a go. This is our spirit of hope. This is our if you
in Manhattan, I'll do it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's our symbol of hope and all good things for our beneficiaries. Howard, look, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a real treat to talk to you. Just before we finish up, we'd love you, the viewers, to give us your feedback. So please head to the charity's Facebook page where you'll find a SurveyMonkey link. It takes 30 seconds to fill out, and do feel free to suggest future guests you'd like to see. We are genuinely all ears. We will have one more in conversation with before the end of the year, featuring a extra special guest. I promise you will not want to miss it. The charity is also working on a virtual laughter-packed Muscle Dream experience like no other, which takes place on December the 22nd, 3 days before Christmas. Look out for updates on the charity's social pages and website for more details on how you can nominate and put people forward for that. Also, if you'd like to make a donation in support of the Muscle Health Foundation, or wish to volunteer or fundraise for us, please head to musclehelp.com. That's musclehelp.com. All that remains for me to do is to say thank you all for watching. It's really appreciated. Thanks to those helping behind the scenes. Grace, Jem, Kate, your work is always appreciated, and you're a big part of making these sessions work. And of course, thank you again to you, Howard. It's been a real pleasure chatting to you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend, everyone. Bye-bye.